Hi, welcome to another IELTS video. In this video, we are going to look at concession, basically what it is and how it can contribute to the health of your IELTS writing. If you find this video helpful, visit my blog at ielts.com and join us at the forum ieltsnetwork.com. Concession is a tool you can use to strengthen your position in a Task 2 argument essay. It is, however, something that needs to be exercised with caution, because if executed improperly, it can cause your argument essay to argue against itself, which of course weakens your overall position and confuses the reader. Before we get rolling, let's define exactly what concession is. Concession is when you admit some merit to a point of view that opposes your own. So, for a simplified example, if I were trying to convince you that Coca-Cola is better than Pepsi, I may write, Coca-Cola is better tasting and comes in more varieties. And although it is not as cheap as Pepsi, it is more widely available. In this statement, I provide some concession to Pepsi. I say it is less expensive than Coke. But I don't let this fact derail my attempts at convincing you that Coca-Cola is overall better than Pepsi. And thus, I use language that reveals the conceding nature of my point about Pepsi. The word although frames the idea as a momentary detour from my central argument. Through declaring the temporary nature of this point about Pepsi, I am diminishing any chance of this counter evidence swaying or confusing you as my reader. Further, in this specific instance, I also reinforce my central argument with another point in support of Coca-Cola, that Coca-Cola is more widely available than Pepsi. Thus, my central argument is preserved throughout this sentence. So this sentence acts as an example of a simple yet healthy use of concession. It's okay to provide some support for the opposing point of view in an argument essay, so long as you maintain the central argument and finish the entire thought on track with your central position. The mistake many candidates make when attempting concession is that they too forcefully argue in support of the opposing side and do not frame the conceding nature of their point, So for another simplified example of this mistake, such a candidate may write, Coca-Cola is better tasting and comes in more varieties than Pepsi. Pepsi is less expensive. Coca-Cola is more widely available. The problem with this is that these sentences read as a list of facts and not a structured support for any central argument. In other words, the writer's central position in support of Coca-Cola isn't as apparent to the reader. Concession can be used in either argument or discussion essay writing, but remember that your discussion essay should be presenting an objective analysis of two or more positions. Thus, any use of concession would need to be framed in a way that preserves the objective nature of your supporting paragraphs. So in other words, try not to confuse concession, which is the willful granting of merit to a point of view that opposes your own, with the discussion essay's unbiased analysis of two sides of an issue. Okay, so let's look at a more complex use of concession and one that is in an IELTS context. Take this example Task 2 question. Personal finance is a topic that should be taught to students in elementary school. Do you agree or disagree? So below this, we see a brainstorming session that a candidate may carry out in the first few minutes of their task to attempt. And this brainstorming session produces one agree point and two disagree points. So we'll read through the points quickly. In agreement is schools are convenient places to dispel information to large numbers of young people. Okay, so that could be arguing in support of the idea that personal finance is a topic that should be taught to students in elementary school. The elementary school facilitates the ability to dispel this information to young people, large numbers of young people. In disagreement, we have 2 points. Teaching personal finance before students fully understand the basics of maths may be confusing. A second point, there are other more important subjects young people should spend their time studying. So because this brainstorming session produces 2 points that support the disagreement side, the student would be best writing an essay, an argument essay that disagrees with the statement in the question, because we have more evidence. Now, a question candidates often have is regarding what role, if any, the agree point that was produced in the brainstorming session holds. Candidates also want to know if looking at this opposing point provides a more well-rounded answer in an argument essay. The thing to remember is that the fundamental purpose of your argument essay is to prove your position. And as you will remember, this position is declared in your thesis at the beginning of the essay. Thus, looking at an opposing point of view, such as this one on the agree side of the table, and not framing this look as a conceding point, causes you to argue against yourself. And doing so confuses the reader and weakens the overall strength with which you declare your position. Sometimes students will go as far as to commit an entire paragraph in their IELTS essay to looking at the merits of a position that opposes the position they took in their thesis. And in an argument essay of only 250 to 300 words, you really have to be careful, as doing this will run the risk of harming your essay's ability to prove its thesis. Please remember that once you have declared your thesis at the beginning of the essay, you are locked into an argument that you are expected to support throughout the remainder of the essay. If you're going to start flipping between the merits of both sides of an argument, you might as well write the essay as a discussion essay. That's a completely different style of essay. So when students ask whether they should allot an entire paragraph to upholding the merits of an opposing point of view in an IELTS argument essay, my advice is to avoid doing this. It's fine to do this if you frame the paragraph with conceding language, but an IELTS essay is simply too short for you to commit an entire paragraph to arguing against your thesis. A better strategy is to tie your conceding points, or to tie your opposing points, like this one on the agree side, into paragraphs that operate in support of your thesis. This way, you do look at the opposing point of view, but you neutralize it by combining it with stronger evidence that supports your thesis. So to demonstrate this in action, we will need to frame this point, schools are convenient places to dispel large numbers of information, in a way where it poses little threat to the central disagree position that we're taking in the essay. So have a look at this supporting paragraph. This supporting paragraph in particular would likely be made the second supporting paragraph of our essay, because this would allow us to be entirely in support of our thesis in the first supporting paragraph, and thus we'd create a stronger foundation for our central argument. Notice how the agree point is given concession and then countered in the opening sentence. Although elementary schools would be convenient places to offer financial education to the young, sacrificing the time students spend studying core subjects could disrupt the base upon which their future studies are built. For example, a typical day at an elementary school in Canada is 8 hours long and includes lessons on key components that make up a solid academic foundation. Were children pushed to devote an hour of this time to studying personal finance, their understanding of other core areas such as maths and language may be jeopardized. Thus, it is clear that making personal finance a mandatory curriculum component at the elementary school level is an idea that should not be supported. As you can see, concession is given to the convenience with which elementary schools could broadcast information to young people, but we don't let this point detract the central purpose of the paragraph, which is to support our disagree position. We encapsulate the conceding nature of this point through our use of although and the comma, this comma. So I'd like to now demonstrate some actionable language you can use to deliver concession in your writing. In these examples, I've outlined the wording patterns by designating X to the area being offered concession and Y to the area centrally supported by the writer. I've also included, in addition to examples that are in an IELTS context, I've included simplified examples using the Coca-Cola Pepsi pattern we were using before, just to help demonstrate a more simplistic version of these patterns. So the first pattern is although X, comma, Y, full stop. For example, although Pepsi is cheaper than Coca-Cola, it does not taste as good, nor is it as widely available. Okay, offering concession to Pepsi without allowing Pepsi to overrun our base argument, which is that Coca-Cola is better than Pepsi. And an example that's more in an IELTS context, although elementary schools would be convenient places to offer financial education to the young, sacrificing the time students spend studying core subjects could disrupt the base upon which their future studies are built. The next structure, in spite of, despite, notwithstanding X. So these three could be used interchangeably, comma, Y, full stop. Despite its more favorable price, Pepsi does not taste as good as Coca-Cola, nor is it as widely available. Or we might say, in spite of its more favorable price, or notwithstanding its more favorable price. The example in an IELTS context, in spite of the convenience with which elementary schools could offer financial education to the young, sacrificing the time students spend studying core subjects would disrupt the base upon which their future studies are built. Another structure, even though X, comma, Y, full stop. Even though it has a more favorable price, comma, Pepsi does not taste as good as Coca-Cola, nor is it as widely available. Even though elementary schools are more capable, even though elementary schools are capable of conveniently offering financial education to the young, sacrificing the time students spend studying core subjects would disrupt the base upon which their future studies are built. X, full stop, nevertheless, comma, Y. Pepsi is cheaper than Coca-Cola. Nevertheless, comma, Coca-Cola tastes better and is more widely available, traits that enhance its attractiveness to the average consumer. Elementary schools could conveniently dispel financial education to the young. Nevertheless, sacrificing the time students spend studying core subjects would disrupt the base upon which their future studies are built. So I hope that video helps explain a few ways that you can look at these alternative points of view in an argument essay without allowing them to confuse your reader or hinder your ability to convince your reader to agree with your opinion on the subject. I hope you found that video helpful. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.